Have you ever walked into a place and felt like you didn't exist? Not like you're just dust floating in an endless void, but like you're standing there solid and real and somehow no one sees you. Before diving into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest tales of truth and triumph. That's exactly how Karoline Leavitt felt that evening, stepping into Rio Grande Bistro, a luxurious gem in her husband Nicholas Rio's restaurant empire. After relentless days in Washington battling left-wing media vultures and shutting down leaks with the precision of a seasoned press secretary, Karoline craved a quiet escape. The Rio Grande Bistro, with its reputation for exquisite cuisine and exclusivity, seemed the perfect spot to unwind. She'd reserved a table under Karoline Wilson to dodge the spotlight, but what unfolded was anything but peaceful. The restaurant's interior dazzled. Polished oak floors gleamed under soft amber lighting, crystal wine glasses sparkled on linen-draped tables, and the faint hum of jazz drifted from a live trio in the corner. But the atmosphere at the hostess stand was anything but serene. Laughter spilled from a cluster of staff, their voices sharp and carefree, cutting through the elegance like a dull knife. Karoline approached the stand, her heels clicking with purpose, her sharp blue eyes scanning the scene. Behind the podium stood Avery, a young woman with disheveled light blue hair, earbuds dangling from her ears, blasting a lively left-wing podcast. She flashed an overly friendly smile, her fingers scrolling through a hashtag-laden progressive post on her phone. "Resist the patriarchy" in bold. Karoline tapped the counter lightly, her voice calm but firm. "I have a reservation under Karoline Wilson." Avery glanced up, her eyes skimming over Karoline like she was a smudge on a window pane. Then froze. She tilted her head, a spark of recognition igniting. Golden hair, that commanding tone, she'd heard it before, barking answers on Fox News. "Karoline Wilson," Avery repeated, her politeness edged with a faint mocking lilt. "Hold on, you're Karoline Leavitt, right? Trump's person?" Karoline raised an eyebrow, not denying it. "I'm Karoline Wilson," she replied, her voice cool as steel. "Please check my reservation." Avery typed lazily, her smile lingering, but her tone shifted to light sarcasm. "I'm so sorry, ma'am, but I don't see anything under that name. Maybe the system's lagging. We prioritize more open-minded guests, you know." The word open-minded hung in the air, dripping with intent. Karoline's lip twitched, sensing the hostility coiled beneath the sweetness. "Open-minded?" she echoed, her voice sharpening. Avery smiled wider, leaning on the podium. "Just our style, ma'am. Hope you understand." Her eyes flashed contempt, locking onto Karoline, a familiar face from White House briefings, a conservative icon she clearly loathed. The air in Rio Grande Bistro grew heavy. A few nearby diners paused their conversations, forks hovering, sensing the brewing tension. Karoline's voice dropped, measured but cutting. "You mean refusing me service because you don't like my views?" Avery gave a slight shrug, small but defiant. "I didn't say that, ma'am," she replied, still polite but with a mocking edge. "I just said the system doesn't show your booking. We have standards here, surely you get that, with your Washington experience." Washington landed like a jab, soft but pointed. Karoline's lip curled into a cold smile. "I understand more than you think. I have the confirmation email right here." She pulled out her phone, swiping to the Rio Grande Bistro email. "Karoline Wilson, table for 1, 7:00 p.m., confirmed." She held the screen toward Avery. "Check again, or explain why it's not in your system." Avery glanced at it, but instead of digging deeper, she tapped a few keys with exaggerated slowness and shrugged again. "I'm so sorry, ma'am," she said, her voice dripping fake sweetness. "Still nothing. Maybe you booked wrong, or someone adjusted it. Happens when guests don't fit our vibe." "Vibe?" Karoline cut in, her voice low and menacing. "You mean refusing me because I don't bow to your woke nonsense?" Avery blinked, a flicker of unease in her eyes, but she quickly regained her footing. "I'm not refusing anything, ma'am," she said, her tone flattening, "but we prioritize guests who respect progress. Like equality, the environment, things maybe not on your agenda, Miss Leavitt." Karoline laughed, a short, sharp sound that sliced through the restaurant's hum. "My agenda? You were picking a political fight with me in my husband's restaurant?" Avery crossed her arms, her smirk returning, but her eyes blazed with hostility. I'm just doing my job, ma'am. But if you want to talk about your husband, why not have him fix the system? I hear people like you are better at pulling strings than solving problems. The words were fuel on a fire. Karoline had faced sanctimonious reporters and leftist politicians in Washington, but this smug attitude from a hostess, posing as a justice warrior, was a new peak. Check again, she said, each word deliberate, her voice icy. Avery sighed. A dramatic huff of annoyance, then typed slowly before flashing a saccharine smile. Still nothing, ma'am. I'm afraid you're not on the list. Maybe because we don't back outdated views like yours. Outdated views. Karoline repeated, her voice dripping sarcasm. You mean the values that built this country, which you and your leftist pals are trying to tear down? Avery flushed, but she didn't back off. I'm not tearing anything down, she shot back, her voice rising slightly. I'm protecting this space from people like you, ones who oppose diversity, others' rights, and think they can bully their way in with fame. Karoline straightened, her eyes like lasers boring into Avery. Protecting this space by refusing customers you don't like. That's the freedom you're so proud of? Avery's lip curled, her tone now tinged with arrogance. I get to choose who I serve, ma'am. This isn't the place for people like you. You should know that, with that Trump press secretary title you carry. The remark was a sly blow, and Karoline felt heat rise in her throat. Interesting, she said, her voice thick with sarcasm. You recognized me from the start and decided to delete my reservation because you don't like what I stand for. Who do you think you are, Avery? A hostess or a self-appointed activist? Avery blinked rapidly, but held her ground. I'm just doing my job, she said. If you don't like it, prove me wrong. I'm waiting. Karoline stepped back, her eyes locked on Avery. She pulled out her phone again, fingers flying through her contacts. Prove it, she repeated, her voice low and threatening. Fine. I'll show you the cost of crossing me. Avery shrugged, her smirk returning. But the shrug trembled noticeably. I'm not scared of you, she said, her voice pitching higher. You might be famous, but here I've got the power. Your power, Karoline replied, her tone icy, is about to run out. The Rio Grande Bistro fell silent, the jazz trio's notes fading as diners turned, sensing an explosion brewing. Karoline stood at the hostess stand, her sharp blue eyes locked on Avery, who'd just thrown out her cocky, I'm waiting challenge. Avery's arms stayed crossed, her smirk plastered on, but the quiver in her voice betrayed her bravado. Karoline held up her phone, fingers racing through contacts, her gaze never leaving Avery, a look honed from crushing opponents in Washington. Josh, she said when her assistant picked up, her voice low but clear. I need you to access Rio Grande Bistro's internal system right now. Hostess account, name Avery. Check the activity log. Josh, ever ready from their White House days, replied briskly. Got it, Miss Leavitt. Give me a minute. The sound of typing crackled through the speaker, sharp like a drum roll before judgment. Avery blinked, her smirk faltering. What are you doing? She asked, her voice rising, losing its fake sweetness. Karoline flicked her a cold glance. I'm giving you one last chance to admit you deleted my reservation. If not, I'll prove it myself. Avery's lip twitched, trying to regain composure. Prove what, ma'am? She said, a hint of mockery lingering. The system doesn't have your name, and I don't have to play along with your power games. This isn't the White House. No, Karoline shot back, her voice sarcastic. It's my husband's restaurant, and you just made it your battlefield. Big mistake. Her phone buzzed faintly, a text from Josh popping up. In the system, Karoline Wilson, table for one, confirmed 6:00 p.m. today, manually deleted by Avriel at 6:45 p.m. Google search, Karoline Leavitt, from same account at 6:43 p.m. Karoline's lip curled into a smile of someone holding the winning card. She turned the screen toward Avery, her voice even but cutting. Look. Avery glanced over, her face paling slightly at the line reservation deleted by Avriel. She blinked fast, fingers clenching. That could be a glitch, she stammered, her voice shaky. I didn't do anything. Computers sometimes... Karoline cut her off, stepping closer, her eyes piercing. A glitch? Then why did your account delete my booking right when I'm standing here? Don't lie. Avery stepped back, hands gripping the podium for support. I was just checking, she said, her voice feeble. It wasn't on purpose. You can't prove, Karoline laughed. A short, sharp sound ringing through the quiet restaurant. Can't prove it? I've got the system log right here. She switched to speaker, calling Josh back. Read it aloud, Josh, she said, her voice icy. Josh's voice came through, dry but precise. Karoline Wilson, reservation, table for 1, confirmed 6 p.m., manually deleted at 6:45 p.m. by the same account. No reason noted. The restaurant stirred, whispers breaking out. A man in a suit nearby muttered, "She's done for." A woman with a wine glass shook her head, but stayed quiet. Karoline killed the speaker, her eyes locked on Avery. You knew I was Karoline Leavitt and deleted my reservation because you don't like what I stand for. This isn't a glitch, Avery, it's you, a discriminator hiding behind progressivism. Avery's mouth opened, but no words came. Her face went white, hands trembling on the podium. I didn't, she stammered, but Karoline didn't let her finish. Didn't what? She pressed, stepping closer. Didn't mean to. You recognized me from the start and decided to teach me a lesson because I don't fit your open-minded mold. Who do you think you are? A hostess or a self-appointed activist, using my husband's restaurant as your soapbox? Avery backed up, her eyes panicking. You don't get it, she said, her voice weak. I just wanted to keep this space safe from people like you, ones who ruin everything we fought for. Ruin? Karoline echoed, dripping sarcasm. You're not protecting anything. You refused me service because you don't like my views, the exact thing you accuse others of doing. You're a hypocrite, Avery. And I've got proof. She held up her phone, the glowing system log like an undeniable verdict. Avery swallowed hard, her eyes darting for an escape. You can't fire me over this, she said, her voice trembling. I have my rights. Karoline's cold smile returned. Your rights end where mine begin. You want to play politics with me? Fine. But now the game's over. She swiped her phone, dialing Nicholas Rio. Nick, she said when he answered. I need you at Rio Grande Bistro right now. There's something you need to see. Maddox's voice, deep and steady, replied. I'm on my way. What's going on? Karoline glanced at Avery, her eyes menacing. One of your staff just refused me service because she doesn't like my politics. Nicholas paused for a second, then said. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Stay put. Karoline hung up, set the phone on the podium, and turned to Avery, her eyes never wavering. Avery stood there, face pale, hands shaking. You can't do this, she said, her voice nearly a whisper. I was just doing my job. Karoline tilted her head, her voice low and commanding. No, Avery. You turned your job into a weapon against me. And now you'll pay. She turned to the dining room, her voice ringing like a press briefing. Anyone here think refusing a customer over politics is progressive? Speak up. The restaurant stayed silent, only Avery's shallow breaths audible. A man in a corner booth clapped lightly, muttering, She's right. A younger woman with a nose ring shook her head but held her tongue. Karoline turned back to Avery, her eyes cold. You picked the wrong fight, and when my husband gets here, you'll see the cost of your arrogance. The Rio Grande Bistro sank into a tense hush, broken only by faint clinks of cutlery and whispers from the crowd. Avery swallowed hard, her face pale after Karoline publicly exposed the deleted reservation evidence. You can't do this, she repeated, her voice feeble. Karoline's lip curled. I didn't do anything. You did. The sound of leather shoes echoed from the entrance, firm and deliberate, cutting through the tension. Nicholas Rio strode in, tall, commanding, in a dark gray suit, his silver-streaked hair catching the amber light, his deep, brown eyes scanning the room like a hawk. Diners parted instinctively, some recognizing the restaurateur behind this culinary empire. He marched straight to the hostess stand, his eyes landing on Karoline first, then shifting to Avery. What's happening? His voice was deep and unyielding, leaving no room for nonsense. Karoline turned to him, her voice calm but sharp. Nick, your employee just refused me service because she doesn't like my political views. She deleted my reservation from the system. I've got proof. She held up her phone, the screen glowing with the log. Reservation deleted by Avril at 6:45 p.m. Nicholas's brow furrowed, his eyes darkening as he looked at Avery. Is this real? Avery blinked fast, her hands trembling, as they left the podium. I didn't, she stammered, but Nicholas raised a hand, his voice like ice. His voice like ice. I'm not asking if you did it. I'm asking if this is real. Avery swallowed hard, her eyes searching for an out. It was just a system error, she said, her voice shaky. I didn't mean to. Caroline cut in, her voice sarcastic. A system error? You said that, while I'm standing here, and the log shows your account deleted it, right after searching me. Want me to read the proof again? She swiped her phone, ready to hit speaker, but Nicholas raised a hand to stop her. Enough, he said, his eyes shifting to Avery. What do you have to say? Avery steadied herself, her voice rising in defense. I was just doing my job, sir. I thought she didn't fit our vibe. She's against everything we stand for, diversity, fairness, progress. I have my rights. Nicholas cut her off, his voice dropping, menacing. Your rights? This is my restaurant, not your political stage. You were hired to seek guests, not judge them. Avery flushed, her eyes panicking. But she's Karoline Leavitt. She stands for things that ruin what we fought for. Nicholas raised an eyebrow, his eyes darkening. She's my wife, he replied, his voice even but cutting like a blade. And you just refused her service in my restaurant. You think that was smart? The dining room buzzed, whispers erupting. His wife. Nicholas ignored it, his eyes locked on Avery. Karoline stepped closer to him, her voice low but commanding. She didn't just refuse me, Nick. She turned your restaurant into her soapbox for her progressive ideals. She thinks she gets to pick who eats here based on politics. Nicholas nodded, his eyes still on Avery. So it's true, he said, his voice like a verdict. You're done. Avery stepped back, her face white. What do you mean? She asked, her voice trembling. Nicholas moved forward, standing right at the podium, his voice loud enough for the restaurant to hear. You're fired. Right now, pack your things and leave in 10 minutes, or I'll call security. The dining room erupted, buzzing voices rising. A man in a suit clapped, muttering, good riddance. A woman with green hair shouted, that's reverse discrimination. But Nicholas didn't flinch, his eyes cold. Avery's mouth gaped, her eyes red-rimmed. You can't do this, she screamed, her voice breaking. I have my rights. This is my space. Karoline cut her off, her voice razor-sharp. Your space? This is my husband's restaurant, not your leftist playground. Want to fight? Do it somewhere else. Avery spun toward Karoline, her eyes blazing with fury. You're a dictator. You think you can use power to force people? Karoline smiled coldly. I'm not forcing anyone. You dug your own grave when you deleted my reservation because you don't like me. This is consequence, not power. Nicholas nodded, his voice booming like a gavel. You heard her. Get out. Avery stood there, hands trembling, tears spilling over. You'll regret this, she whispered, her voice choked. The left won't let this slide. Nicholas shrugged, his eyes unflinching. Let them try. Now go. Avery stumbled back, turning and fleeing to the staff room, her sobs echoing as she disappeared. The dining room erupted. Some guests clapped, shouting she deserved it. Another with a phone yelled, this is oppression. I'm posting this on X. Flashes popped like a mini protest. Nicholas glanced at a nearby waiter, his eyes like ice, his voice low and sharp. Get the manager out here now. I want to know why he let this happen right under his nose. The waiter blinked, his face paling, then nodded frantically before bolting off like he was escaping a storm. The Rio Grande Bistro settled after the chaos, Avery's sobs fading as she vanished behind the staff room door. Diners dispersed, a few still filming, whispering about what they'd witnessed. Karoline stood beside Nicholas, her sharp blue eyes scanning the space, that cold smile lingering on her lips. Nicholas pulled his hand from her shoulder. his deep brown eyes darkening as he turned to the waiter who'd run to fetch the manager. "Where is he?" he asked, his voice low but laced with menace. The waiter, a young man with sweat beading on his forehead, stammered, "Mr. Hensley's coming, Mr. Rayo. He's in the back office." Nicholas nodded, his hissing eyes never leaving the kid. "Good. Tell him to hurry." "I don't wait long." Karoline glanced at her husband, her blue eyes flashing resolve. "I want to know who let this happen right under his nose." "Nick. Avery didn't dare do this alone." Nicholas gave a slight nod, his eyes darkening in agreement. "I want to root this out too." The door behind the hostess stand swung open, and Mark Hensley stepped out, a middle-aged man with thinning hair, sloppy in a wrinkled gray suit, his eyes darting nervously. Sate dotted his forehead as he saw Nicholas and Karoline standing there like twin pillars of authority. "Mr. Racio, Miss Leavitt," he said, his voice shaky, forcing a weak smile. "I just heard something happened. Is there a problem?" Karoline stepped forward, her eyes like lasers boring into Mark. "A problem," she echoed, her voice dripping sarcasm. "Your employee just refused me service because she didn't like my politics. She deleted my reservation and turned this restaurant into a leftist soapbox. Is that a problem, Mr. Hensley?" Mark blinked fast, wiping sweat from his brow. "No, I'm so sorry, Miss Leavitt. I didn't know that happened." Nicholas cut in, his voice deep and cold. "You didn't know? You're the manager here. How do you not know your staff refused my wife? Right in the dining room." Mark stepped back, his eyes darting for an exit. I was in the office, sir. I can't watch everything at once." "Avery, she's new. Maybe she misunderstood policy." "Misunderstood?" Karoline snapped, her voice like a blade. "She didn't misunderstand anything. She deliberately deleted my booking because she doesn't like me. I've got the system log proof. This isn't a random mistake, Mark. It's your system enabling her arrogance." She held up her phone, the screen still glowing with Josh's evidence. Mark swallowed hard, his voice trembling. "I'll look into it, Miss Leavitt. I promise I'll see you." Nicholas stepped forward, his eyes darkening. "Look into it. It's already happened, and you let it. Do you know what this restaurant stands for? This is my property, not a playground for your staff's political game." Mark bowed his head, hands wringing like he was pleading. "Mr. Rio, I didn't enable anything. I didn't want trouble with staff. Avery, she's stubborn, but I thought she'd adjust on her own." "Adjust on her own?" Karoline's voice cut through, sharp and ringing in the dining room. "She refused me in front of everyone, and you think she'd adjust? Are you a manager or just a placeholder, Mark?" Mark flushed, his eyes panicking. I tried training her, Miss Leavitt, but she's got strong beliefs. She talked about freedom, diversity, and I didn't want a lawsuit for pushing her." Karoline repeated, dripping sarcasm. "She used freedom to discriminate against me because I don't fit her leftist ideals, and you enabled it because you're scared of trouble. What have you turned this restaurant into?" Mark shrank back, his voice weak. "I didn't mean for this, Miss Leavitt. I was just keeping the peace." Nicholas cut in, his voice like a verdict. "Peace? You let your staff insult my wife because you wouldn't face them. That's not peace, Mark, that's weakness." Mark's head dropped, sweat streaking his cheeks. "I'm sorry, Mr. Rio. I'll fix it." Karoline interrupted, her eyes cold. "Fix it? You let this under your nose, and you didn't know until my husband had to come here. Do you know the cost of your weakness?" Mark looked up, his eyes pleading. "Please, Miss Leavitt. I need this job. I have a family." Karoline stepped closer, her voice low but menacing. "I don't care what you need. I care that my husband's restaurant became a joke, because you didn't do your duty. You let Avery act like she owned this place, and you did nothing." Mark shook his head, his voice quaking. "I'll change. I'll tighten control. Please, give me a chance." Nicholas glanced at Karoline, his eyes seeking her input. She nodded slightly, but her voice stayed sharp. "Fine, Mark, you get one chance. But if I hear one more time about your staff refusing guests over petty political nonsense, you won't just lose your job. You'll lose everything you've built here." Mark nodded frantically, sweat dripping to the floor. Thank you, Miss Leavitt. Thank you, Mr. Rio. I won't let this happen again. But Karoline turned to Nicholas, her voice low. What do you think, Nick? Nicholas shrugged, his eyes fixed on Mark. I trust you, but I want him to prove he's not useless. He turned to Mark, his voice deep. Hire someone new for Avery's spot. That them better. I don't want another one thinking they can turn my restaurant into a soapbox. Got it? Mark nodded, his eyes wide with fear. Yes, sir. I'll do it right away. Karoline looked at Mark, her eyes cold. Good. But I'll be watching you, Mark. Don't let me down again. Mark bowed his head, muttering, I won't, Miss Leavitt. Then turned, hurrying back to his office, like a man who just dodged a death sentence. Karoline pulled her phone from her coat pocket, the screen lighting up with a flood of X notifications, the app she often used to track public opinion and counter left-wing media spin. Nicholas glanced over, his deep brown eyes flickering with curiosity. Anything goist? He asked, his voice low. Karoline's lip curled, that cold smile returning. Oh, you'll like this, she replied, swiping through the alerts. In mere minutes since Avery's public firing, the incident had exploded online. The hashtag and Karoline vs. liberal hostess trended, at number 3, paired with short videos from diners, flashes popping, Avery's shouts, and Karoline's sharp voice cutting through like a White House briefing. She opened the first video, posted by a Patriot Mike, with the caption, Karoline Leavitt takes down a leftist hostess in her husband's restaurant. This is real America. The clip cut to Nicholas firing Avery, the crowd clapping, and Karoline shutting it down with a steel trap question. Comments below roared support. She's a legend. Leftists lose again, don't mess with Karoline. She smiled, her eyes glinting with satisfaction, at the hundreds of likes and shares. Nicholas leaned in, his eyes darkening as he watched. They're fast, he said, his voice deep. You're more famous than I thought. Karoline shrugged, her voice sarcastic. I'm used to being filmed and hated. She switched to another post, this time from A Blue Wave Rises. A leftist account, Karoline Leavitt abuses power to fire a worker for daring to stand against oppression. This is the true face of conservatives. The attached video zoomed in on Avery crying, with comments, she's a victim, dictatorship in disguise. Cancel Rio Grande Bistro. Karoline laughed, a short sharp sound. Victim? She repeated, her voice thick with disdain. She deleted my reservation because she didn't like my views, and now they call me the oppressor. Classic leftist logic. Nicholas nodded, his eyes flashing agreement. They always pull that turn the wrongdoer into a hero. But you've got proof. Karoline nodded slightly, scrolling on. Exactly. And I won't let them spin this. She opened a post from A-Rail News Now, a prominent conservative account. Karoline Leavitt proves the left can't handle the truth. Liberal hostess refuses her service. Gets fired on the spot. This is a win for real freedom. It featured a photo of Karoline holding her phone with the system log. Comments flooding, she doesn't back down. Trump should be proud. Leftists crying again. Karoline smiled, her eyes lighting up as retweets soared over 1,000 in minutes. But not everyone cheered. An account, A Justice for Avery, posted a video of Avery leaving the restaurant, tears streaming, captioned, Avery fired for standing up to Karoline Leavitt, a power-hungry bully who can't handle dissent. Boycott Rio Grande Bistro. Comments raged. She was just defending her values. Karoline's a bully. This is reverse discrimination. Karoline raised an eyebrow, her voice sarcastic. Defending her values by refusing me service? They need to look up bully in the dictionary. Nicholas looked at her, his eyes glinting with amusement. What are you going to do with this? He asked. Karoline swiped her finger across the screen, her voice low but resolute. I'll let them dig their own grave. The truth is clear, she was wrong. And I have proof. The more they scream, the more they expose their hypocrisy. She opened the X app. Typing a tweet, Avery refused me service over my politics, got fired for her actions. Not me, this is consequence, not oppression. Karoline vs. liberal hostess. She hit send, her eyes flashing as the tweet instantly racked up dozens of likes within seconds. Karoline's tweet exploded. Conservatives shared it furiously, with comments like, "She's right, don't let the left twist the truth." But liberals struck back hard. A progressive voice replied, "Karoline Leavitt thinks she's above the law. Firing a worker for differing beliefs is tyranny." Karoline scrolled past, her eyes cold. "Above the law," she muttered. "She broke restaurant policy. Not me." She turned to Nicholas, her voice low. "They won't stop, Nick, but neither will I." Nicholas nodded, his eyes darkening. "I don't care what they say online. I just want my restaurant free of these political stunts." Karoline smirked faintly, her gaze sweeping the dining room. "Don't worry, after today, no one will dare try again. Not under our roof." Her phone buzzed non-stop. X notifications piling up. A post from a MAGA warrior rose up. "Karoline Leavitt is the conservative queen, took down a leftist hostess, and made them cry online. Double win." Karoline smiled lightly, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. But a post from A Left United made her pause. "We stand with Avery. Karoline Leavitt and her husband represent elite oppression. Justice for Avery." Karoline's lip curled, her voice sarcastic. "Elite? I just wanted a table." Nicholas placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice deep. "You won, Karoline. They can yell all they want, the truth doesn't change." She nodded, her eyes locked on the screen. "True, and I'll make sure they don't forget it." She scrolled to a final tweet from a real Karoline fan. She didn't just defend herself, she defended us all from woke insanity. "Thank you, Karoline," she smiled, her eyes flashing victory. Not just personal, but political. Karoline and Nicholas crossed the Rio Grande Bistro, heading for the private dining room, upstairs where they could strategize undisturbed. The door closed behind them, the soft glow of chandeliers casting shadows on Karoline's face. Still sharp, though slightly softened. "Mark's a bigger problem than Avery," she said, her voice low. "He's weak, letting staff run wild like they own the place. We can't let him keep doing that." Nicholas shrugged, his eyes fixed on the table. "He's got a chance to fix it, but if you want to change, just tell me." They settled into plush chairs, the room's polished wood and velvet upholstery a stark contrast to the chaos below. Nicholas pulled a bottle of whiskey from a cabinet, pouring 2 glasses and handing one to Karoline, his eyes expectant. She took it, sipped, then set it down with a faint clink, her voice firm. "I don't want risks, Nick. Mark's not strong enough to manage. He let Avery turn this restaurant into a joke before we stepped in. But if you want to give him a shot, there have to be conditions." Nicholas nodded slightly, his eyes glinting agreement. "Fine, I'll give him one shot, but he has to prove it." Karoline walked to the window, gazing down at the now quiet dining room. "Not just Mark," she said, her voice low. "We need to change how things run here. Hire new people, ones who work, not ones using this restaurant as a soapbox. Tighter background checks, clearer policies, no tolerating political games." Nicholas sat back, sipping whiskey, his eyes locked on her. "Got a specific plan yet?" Karoline turned, her eyes blazing with resolve. "Yes. I want you to set terms with Mark. Either he controls his staff, or he's out. If we keep him, bring in a tough assistant from my Washington team, someone who worked with me under Trump. They know how to keep order." Nicholas nodded, his eyes sparking interest. "I trust you, but I want Mark reporting straight to me. No middlemen, deal?" "Deal," Karoline replied, her voice sharp. "And I want a new policy. Any staff refusing service over personal or political reasons gets fired on the spot. No excuses. This is a restaurant, not an ideological battlefield." Nicholas smirked faintly, his eyes darkening. "I like that. I'll have legal draft it by morning." "Anything else?" Karoline stepped forward, sitting across from him, her eyes never leaving his. "I want to send a message, not just here, but across your whole chain. After Avery, people need to know the cost of challenging us." Nicholas tilted his head, his eyes glinting with curiosity. "What do you mean?" Karoline's lip curled, her voice low and menacing. "I'll work with the PR team, post an official statement on X and your channels. Anyone pulling an Avery stunt gets no second chance, here or anywhere." Nicholas sipped more whiskey, his eyes lighting with approval. "You play hard," he said, his voice deep. "But I like it. I'll sign off. You go for it. Karoline nodded slightly, her eyes scanning the room. Good. And I want you to personally oversee Mark. Make sure he doesn't screw up again. Nicholas nodded, setting his glass down. Done. I'll watch him. They sat in silence for a moment, the room's air heavy but charged with power. Karoline stood, walking to the cabinet, pouring another whiskey. Today was a lesson, not just for Avery or Mark, but for anyone thinking they can exploit us. Nicholas rose, stepping beside her, his eyes locked on her. I know, and you handled it well, like always. Karoline turned to him, her eyes glinting with satisfaction. We're a team, Nick. I protect you here like in Washington. Nicholas placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice deep but warm. I never doubted that. After today, no one will doubt us either. She smiled, her eyes blazing victory. Exactly. They'll remember the cost of crossing us. Nicholas nodded, his eyes sweeping the window to the dining room below. I'll issue orders now, monitor Mark, hire new staff, update policies. You handle PR. Karoline nodded slightly, her eyes fixed on him. I will. By tomorrow, the world will know Rio Grande isn't a playground for ideological nonsense. Nicholas smirked faintly, his eyes darkening. Good. Now rest, you've earned it. She turned back, her eyes locked on Nicholas. Today wasn't just about Avery or Mark, Nick, she said, her voice low but powerful. It's about what we stand for, real American values. Nicholas nodded slightly, his eyes darkening. You're right. And we proved it. Karoline's lip curled, that cold smile, returning. I want them to remember forever. She stepped to the table, picking up the remaining whiskey glass, sipping, then setting it down with a faint clink. I've seen it in Washington. People like Avery think they can use ideals to justify arrogance, to shut others out while calling themselves victims. Today, we showed them the cost of that. Nicholas stood, joining her side, his eyes agreeing. You did, and I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. Not here, not in any of my restaurants. Karoline nodded, her eyes blazing resolve. Good. But this isn't just about the restaurant, Nick. It's a win for people like us, ones who believe in real freedom, not the fake kind the left preaches. She turned to the window, her voice low but resounding like a White House briefing. Avery thought she could challenge me because I don't fit her open-minded mold. She was wrong, and now she knows the price of arrogance. The story of Karoline Leavitt booking a table at her husband's restaurant, only to face a liberal hostess's costly mistake, mirrors the deep political and cultural polarization tearing through the United States. Conservative and liberal ideologies clash daily in public and private spaces, and this tale captures that divide in vivid detail. Karoline, a conservative White House press secretary, squares off against Avery, a liberal hostess who refuses her service over political disdain, cloaking her actions in open-mindedness and personal freedom. The incident escalates as Karoline wields system logs to expose Avery, leading to her immediate firing by Nicholas, Karoline's husband, followed by the couple reinforcing their authority with updated policies and a bold X statement. The polarized X reactions, trending under Karoline versus liberal hostess, reflect today's America, where personal incidents morph into ideological battlegrounds. From those hailing Karoline as a conservative queen, to those defending Avery as a victim of oppression. The divide is stark. The lesson isn't just about winning or losing. It's about navigating conflict in a fractured society. Karoline's calm reliance on evidence over emotion highlights the power of preparation and reason when challenged. A vital skill in a country where political arguments erupt everywhere, from restaurants to social media. Nicholas and Karoline holding Mark accountable for his weakness underscores that leadership must enforce responsibility, not tolerate laxness to avoid trouble, a reminder for individuals and businesses alike that small oversights can snowball into major consequences. Finally, Karoline's message about real American values urges people to stand firm in their beliefs, but warns them to defend those beliefs with action, not just words as she did with Avery and Mark. In a nation where every move can explode on X, the takeaway is clear: stand tall, wield truth as a weapon, and never shy from consequences. Because silence rarely wins in today's culture war. Don't forget to subscribe to follow stories of fighting for truth like Karoline's.